everybody, once again, this is Jonathan Miller with the Hometown Historian channel. We are back here once again in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. We are here at the Cornwall and Lebanon Railroad Station. Right over there is the Reading Railroad Station, which we had visited earlier. This was bought, the railroad itself, the Cornwall and Lebanon, was created by Robert Habersham Coleman. And just quite the ornate building. This was the Coleman family's, they said the Coleman family's personal rail station, but the more you learn about it, they weren't necessarily happy about, because they already had the Cornwall Railroad, which operated out of the Reading Railroad Station, and they weren't too happy with Robert Habersham Coleman for starting his own railroad, but he decided he wanted to have a different business venture, so he went ahead with doing this. The Cornwall and Lebanon Railroad was started, I believe, in 1883. This was built in 1885, and you can see up there at the clock right above it, they have the C and the L, and it says and RR, which is the Cornwall and Lebanon Railroad. This was designed by George Watson Hewitt. It's an eclectic Victorian style terracotta, brick and brownstone that you'll see in there. And it's reflecting a 17th century Flemish, which would be French, I believe, Romanesque, which we had just been down at the Salem Evangelical Lutheran Church. That has a Romanesque architectural style as well, but this also has, it's what's called a Chateau-esque, unique, it's very unique style. And this was, the Colemans really had an aesthetically pleasing taste in architecture. And they like to use this guy quite a bit to do their different buildings that they had. They were Cornwall Iron Dynasty. Unfortunately, he didn't make some good business decisions. Apparently, he overinvested in the Florida railway system. And over a course of, I think, from 1914 to 1918, he had to sell the Cornwall and Lebanon Railroad, including its building. And I believe over that time, the Pennsylvania Railroad bought all the stock that was involved with this railroad company. And so they wound up having it and owning it by 1918, and eventually Cornwall and Lebanon Railroad shut down. This railroad station, this was sort of the end of the line. This went back to Cornwall and then also as far south as Conewago. And it was in operation for what would have been 33 years. Probably was in operation a little bit longer than that for the Pennsylvania Railroad. How long exactly, I'm not sure, but it is just, it's one of those buildings that's just beautiful. And this is on the Registry of Historic Places in the United States. And you just see like the ironwork and all that is just beautiful, beautiful building. Let's quick go over here and we can look at this a little closer. And we'll go around the entire building, but you can just see this is just one of those buildings that was reminiscent of the times. You know, the rail stations would be quite ornate. Now, we've been to a couple stations that were pretty plain, like your normal towns. They would have been, you know, they're beautiful. I think like the Annville rail station and the Palmyra rail station, which is what a lot of them look like, were really, really beautiful structures, but they weren't to this standard. You know, your larger towns like Lebanon would have had these much larger stations, much more ornate. You'd have to have one of those, you know, dynamo families that had a lot of money and could afford to build something of this type of grandeur. But this is definitely, like, the Reading Railroad Station is really, really pretty, but this is on a completely different level. And it makes sense, as the Coleman family, they were renowned for, they didn't hold back when it came to spending money on something that they wanted to have that was beautiful and lasted. And you think about it, I mean, 1885, when this was built, you know, this is basically coming up on 150 years that this place has been in existence. So once again, I find the ironwork here to be extraordinary. And there you can see his Chuck still doing well. And over here is where they have, this is currently occupied by Strickler Insurance here in Lebanon, but they do have the plaque here that talks about it being on the National Registry of Historic Places. I think this was placed in the 70s is when this was placed in the historic registry, right around the same time as the Reading Railroad Station. Usually, if you know, depending on who you had really pushing for it to be done, they would do that type of stuff. And being with the railroad stations are so close together too, it's not shocking that they would have been done right around the same time, be put on the registry, because you have to fight for that, because a lot of it has to do it's not only because it's a historic place, but a major reason for doing that is to make sure that the place is preserved. Thankfully, Strickler Insurance bought this and has made sure that it's been preserved and taken care of, and they've done a beautiful job with that. But that's a major reason why, because you have a number of these historic structures, if they don't have those protections, you know, somebody comes along and they want the land, goodbye to that historic building. And thankfully, that is not the case here. This is one like the Reading Railroad Station across the street that has been preserved. And thanks once again, everybody, for coming along. This is another of America's rail stations. Beautiful, beautiful place. And thank God it's preserved, because you know, this is really, in a lot of ways, is our heritage. And you know, just to think about everything that these buildings have seen, the lives, and everybody that's gone through, you know, peacetime, wartime, really is thankful that this place still exists and is maintained so beautifully. So with that, I'll say thank you, and we will see you all about town.